be part of it.
Good afternoon, chess fans, and welcome to our live coverage of the championship round here from Wijk aan Zee. The 2016 Tata Steel Chess Tournament is underway for this, our 13th and final round. It's been a marathon event with world champion Magnus Carlsen putting his very special brand on chess on this event. He's played well. He's played creative, as you've seen in his game with Pavel, and he has played aggressive chess as against Tomaszewski, opportunistic and also fortunate. Today he enters the round with an 8.5 out of 12 score. He leads the field by a half a point. Fabiano Caruana in second at 8. And Magnus is going to be tested today. He plays against China's number 1 player, Ding Liren, who's in third place, a point behind. A very nice pairing for our championship Sunday. Wesley So, Anish Giri, very happy, I suppose, with their +1 score for Wesley. He's gone through the field undefeated. Wei Yi at 50%. Shek Mamidarov at 50%, Pavel Ulyanov at 50%, David Navarra, Mr. Excitement himself, at -1, Sergei Karyakin, -1, Hu Yifan had a good start, but a poor rough ride, I would say, in the second half. She has 4.5, and she is tied with a group of players at 4.5. Evgeny Tomaszewski, the Russian champion, Lopan Veli, and Mickey Adams. Let us see today's pairings. And there they are. Shakhriyar Mamidarov versus Sergei Karyakin. Luke Van Welly Wei Yi. Evgeny Tomaszewski, Fabiano Caruana. That's a match we're going to be keeping a careful eye on, as Fabi needs a win and a hope-for result by Ding Liren. Pavel Ulyanov, David Navarra, Magnus Carlsen, Ding Liren, our featured game, Mickey Adams versus Wesley So, and finally the Dutch hope, Anish Giri versus Hu Yifan. And as we've gotten underway, we started early today, an hour and a half early to be precise, so that there will be a closing ceremony, pea soup. The traditional pea soup here in Wijk aan Zee for the closing ceremony. Magnus was a bit late to the board, but when he finally did make it, he played 1 e4, and the players have a Spanish at the board. For Ding Liren, it's a tough one. Should he play the Berlin and try to make a peaceful draw, or could he possibly mix it up with some crazy variation like, I don't know, a6, bishop a4, and f5. In other words, does he go for it if he would like to win the tournament? And let me just see if any more moves have been played. No, it's still bishop. Well, on my webcam, I have a lot of moves, but on my relay, I don't. So I'm a bit behind on my relay. It looks, from what I can see from the webcam, it does look to be an open Spanish with knight f6. So a clear indication that Ding Liren is interested in playing quite a full-bodied game. At least this is the position I believe that's on the board from my webcam. Bishop e6, Magnus Carlsen to play. We saw a very nice game earlier in the tournament. It was played in our Railroad Museum. Was with c3, bishop e7, bishop c2. You may recall that this was the game that Fabiano played against Wei Yi. All right. So let's just take a stroll around our stage and take a look at that second fight for second place between Fabiano Caruana and Tomaszewski. Tomaszewski White. Opened with 1 d4, knight f6, c4, knight c3, Nimzo, and the Rubinstein variation of the Nimzo. One of the nice ideas, and when I was younger, what attracted me to this variation in particular as white with e2, e3 was this idea of playing a very early knight g1, e2, oftentimes without first moving the bishop to d3, and then playing a3 so there would be no double pawns. b6, and we see it, knight g1, e2. Bishop d3, tons and tons of games, of course, with what we could more properly consider as the main line. Knight g1, e2, a little off the beaten path, hoping to catch Fabi in the opening. c7, c5, a3, hoping to force black to trade on c3, and bishop a5. All very well known. It looks a little bit strange, this bishop on a5, but it has a very nice purpose. As long as this knight, essentially this knight on e2 is kind of glued to his colleague here. As soon as the knight on e2 moves, for example, either to the f4 square or to the g3 square, only in that case is black intent on capturing the knight. Rook b1, knight a6, stopping the idea of b4. And I think I have it, well, I certainly have it in my mind. Whether I actually played this line or not, I'm not sure. The idea of queen a4, again, to reinforce b4. Black keeps the b4 square under guard with the move queen e7, so that b4 still can't be forced. Now, if I recall, the problem from white's point of view here is that this bishop on f1 isn't developed. So you want to play the move g3. The idea behind this move is very straightforward. Bishop g2, castles, and this knight on c3 is about to move, which will leave this bishop embarrassed if white gets to play bishop g2 and castles. So after g3, bishop b7, d5. C takes d5, bishop comes to g2, pinning the pawn on d5 to the bishop on b7. And again, from white's point of view, his dream is to castle, and then to capture with his knight on c3 captures d5, and again to leave this bishop on a5 a little bit stranded. Let me catch up to the players and see. He did not play, Evgeny did not play the move g3 as expected. Rather, he simply played knight g3. All right, let's just go back a second to, pardon me, let me just go back a second to this position. a3, bishop a5, and now this move rook b1. Imagine in our mind's eye that white had played knight g3. In this case, black's not going to put his knight on a6. Rather, after, for example, takes, knight to c6, black's idea is very easy to understand. He wants to play knight a5, attacking this pawn on c4, followed by bishop a6. So that was why white included the move rook b1 first, knight a6. So what white is making the argument is your knight on a6 is now on a silly square. It cannot attack my pawn on c4. Now I'll play knight g3, intent on just completing my development with bishop d3 and castles. Bishop b7, I believe, was played, trying to prevent white from moving his bishop on f1 because of the g2 pawn. So it's all still quite theoretical, and let me just, I'll ask our production team in a minute how the players in these two key matchups have fared against one another. In other words, what's Magnus' score with Ding Liren, and what is Fabiano's score with Evgeny? But first, let me just check on the Michael Adams game, and I'm going to be back with Magnus. Mickey Adams versus Wesley So. Holy cow. The players are not waiting. They're moving really, really at a sprinter's pace. And it looks like Wesley, too, that seems to be something in the air in this round, has also played the open Rui. Okay, let's see how it got here. Bishop a4. So in general, the open Rui has not been a big favorite amongst the world's elite. Several players use it as a surprise weapon, and at one time Viktor Korchnoi, Vishy Anand actually used it as one of their main lines of defenses, but it's not been that popular, and it's ironic that in the championship round, we're seeing two open Rui Lopez's. c3, bishop e7, bishop c2, d4, knight b3, d3. All of these moves are well known according to theory. Bishop e3. And the players, like I said, have been in a sprint, and we get into this rather well known, but I want to say a little dry ending, a little bit better for white, thanks to, for example, after rook takes c2, thanks to this pawn on e6. A little bit better for white, but I guess Wesley feels very confident that he has sufficient resources to equalize the game. Wesley wants to bring his rooks to d8 and d5, and eventually play bishop f6 to dislodge this bishop on d4, which is clogging up the d file. All right, let's get back to Magnus Carlsen, and we'll see how oh my goodness. Dare I say, it looks rather familiar. Oh my goodness. Something in the air today as the players are copying. Reminds me a little bit of the game between Fabiano and Wei Yi, where those two players were playing the identical opening on their boards. And the same ending, bishop d4. I wonder if Mickey is aware that Magnus has just played his move. Magnus getting up from the board to walk around the stage and check out the other games. I think he might be a bit surprised to see the same ending on another table. My producers asked the salient question. Are Adams and Ding have not worked with Magnus, or have they? They have. Both Mickey and Ling Daring have worked with Magnus in the past. My goodness, I didn't know that. That's quite a surprise. Although it makes you wonder, who hasn't worked with Magnus? I have not worked with Magnus. So I'm one of the lonely ones. All right, let's walk around our stage and see what we have on some of the other boards. And by the way, what is the record between Ding and Magnus?
So I have to look it up. It's also a bit harder for us.
Okay. We have the game between Anish Giri and Hu Yifan. Anish has had a very strange tournament, to be sure. He he's lost one game, and he's very fortunate that he's managed to lose only a single game, but while also winning two. So he could have had a disastrous result in this event, but he's managed to hold those bad positions and take advantage when able with two wins. Today he plays against Hu Yifan. I suppose we're going to have to blame Alexander Grishuk for popularizing the move bishop f4, a kind of a London system, and a lot of players have taken up this system as white. Bishop f4, d5, e3, c5. Remember doing a lot of summer camps and works where amateur players just love playing this kind of a collie system as white, and playing for knight on f3 to e5, and then building up the development behind the knight on e5. I'm told that Ding Liren and Magnus Carlsen have only played once before, and it was at last year's Wijk aan Zee, where they made a draw with one another. Knight b d2, bishop d6, knight e5, there we have it. I'm just thinking about the games of Sergei Karyakin versus Mickey Adams, a game that Mickey won, as well as a game between Evgeny Tomaszewski and Magnus Carlsen white in that game. Fabiano Caruana and Tomaszewski, their matchup really has favored Fabiano greatly, quite a big surprise. 3 wins for Fabiano and only 2 draws for Tomaszewski. He has not won a game against his opponent. I go to Mr. Excitement, David Navarra on the black side of, looks like another Queen's Indian. e3, quiet system. Bishop e7. Okay, that's just a fine move, nothing wrong with that. I remember a lot of players felt that in such positions, bishop b4 was the more opportune move, kind of Nimzo Indian, and black plays for the piece control over the e4 square. Bishop e7, b3. Okay, that's a bit a surprise to me. I'm more familiar with the lines that go bishop d3, playing for e3, e4, d5, castles, and you're going to find lots and lots of games in your database with that position. Bishop e7, b3, okay, and we're up to date after castles. Well, I can't really see a better play for white than bishop b2. It's possible, though I don't really believe it, it's possible that we might see another fianchetto with g3 and bishop g2. So, very quiet game going on at the start of this round between Pavel and David. And bishop b2 was Pavel's move. We'll move over to the game between Shak Mamidarov and Sergei Karyakin. Shak revealed that before the tournament, he came on for an interview on air, and he explained that in his previous outings here in Wijk aan Zee, he's not been very successful. And that, in fact, in his previous games, he had only won once in the entire time, and that was against Luc Van Welly. Well, at least he'll be able to say he had a much better 2016 tournament, as he's had a few victories, and an unbelievable loss to Elianov, where he blundered an entire rook. Queen's Gambit accepted by Sergei Karyakin, a bit of a surprise. Today I just want to say that the Queen's Gambit accepted was one of my favorite ways of neutralizing d4. And overall, I think I had a very good record with the Queen's Gambit accepted. Today, it's not that popular because of e4. And in these lines of the Queen's Gambit accepted, some very deep theory has been put in the chess engines, and the players have really worked hard on the white side. And it would appear that white is getting an advantage in those lines. Of course, knight f6 isn't the only move. There's quite a number of moves. In fact, knight c6 as well as e5 are all possible ways of countering 3e4. But Shaq took the mainline approach, knight f3 and e3, and bishop b3. So lots of theory in this line. Queen e2, a4, bishop d3 have all been tried by white. And as white in this position, I've also liked the variation introduced by Akiba Rubinstein, which is b2, b3, and no longer playing for the isolated queen pawn, but just playing bishop b2, and having a nice little development edge, let's say. Okay, bishop b3 was Shaq's move, takes, right? All very standard stuff, and we're still deep in theory. So let's continue a walk around the stage, and we'll bring up the game. Oh, that's Mickey Adams, Wesley So. So I was expecting that black will play rook d5, but now I'm seeing for the first time that if you do put the rook on d5, you're encouraging white to make the move c3, c4, and this pawn on c7, pardon me, which is usually the problem pawn in the open Spanish, is going to be a target. Okay, let's continue. Ooh, Loke Van Welly, Wee Yee. And this is actually one of the most interesting positions of this final round. I'm told that in the game between Mickey Adams and Wesley So, they're following a game that was played in 2007, where Mickey Adams was white against Dutch Grandmaster Jan Smeets. So I'm wondering if Wesley is aware of Mickey's record in this particular position. Now let's take a look at the game between Loke Van Welly and Wei Yi. Loke white, knight f3, knight f6. And of course we know that Wei Yi is a die-in-the-wool Grunfeld defense player. And we have a Grunfeld-ish position on the board. White could, with the move d4 or e4, he could transpose easily into mainline Grunfeld defenses. In this particular position, white has tried moves like queen a4 check to avoid mainline Grunfelds, followed by queen d4 as well as queen h4. Luke prepares a little something with a little flavor to it. He has played the move h2, h4, bishop g7, h5, knight c6, g3, e5. And I'm kind of wondering what it is that Luke is so happy about with his pawn on h5. And I guess he's going to go bishop g2. Perhaps simply knight b6. And it looks like an English, kind of a reverse dragon English. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a few minutes as we check our equipment here from Wijk aan Zee. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our coverage of the 13th and final round of this 2016 Tata Steel Chess Tournament. We're just doing a little mic check there, and I've got the game between Evgeny Tomaszewski and Fabiano Caruana up on my screen. After the move bishop b7, which of course eyeballs this pawn on g2, Evgeny said, okay, I'm willing to play the position. Let me play the move f2, f3, locking in that bishop. And it looks, White's pieces look a little strange when you just kind of see the two knights, one on g3 and c3, a rook on b1. But something similar can be said for Black's pieces. In particular, the bishop on a5, as well as the knight on a6, do not make that attractive impression. And we can see from White's point of view, if White can simply play bishop d3 castles, at a certain moment, Black is going to feel very obliged to capture this knight on c3 before it moves away from the board and leaving the bishop on a5 stranded. So takes, and we've got a problem here from White's point of view. This bishop on c1 is blocked in by this pawn on e3. So it's very easy to imagine that White will want to play e3, e4 very quickly and develop the bishop to g5. So we could say that Fabiano has solved the issue with his bishop on a5, but now he still has a problem of what the heck is that knight on a6 doing there. Again, the most attractive square is 3 moves away. Knight b8, c8, knight b8 to c6 to a5 to target this pawn on c4. He doesn't have to capture immediately. So for example, we could see a move like castles, bishop d3, and perhaps the move d5. Again, I suspect we're all in theory still, and well, the battle is still yet to be joined. Fabiano has a very deserved reputation as an excellent, he's very, very well prepared in his openings. Just to toss out something of interest, notice that after d5, there's a funny move here, b4. I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, but if you just imagine a position like this, it would be much better if my king were already on g1, by the way, but you can imagine a situation where this bishop, if White were able to play bishop takes a3, this bishop on a5 would feel itself very, very offside indeed. So you just have to be aware of a tactical possibility based on b2, b4. Let me go back to our board number 1 with world champion Magnus Carlsen against Ding Liren. And again, the players are following one another, Mickey Adams and Wesley So, and we've seen this move bishop e3, and the rook went back to e5. I mentioned before, if the rook had gone to the d5 square, the problem there is white has, after rook to d5, this favorable break c2, c4 with a tempo. This rook on c2 is eyeballing this pawn on c7, and black will find himself having seized the defensive. So I'm assuming that with the move